Thank you very much, Laurence. Sadly, lunch not quite yet. We're just going to have a quick question and answer. So could I ask my speakers to take a seat here? And there must be questions out there. We're going to have to be fairly economical because time is not on our side. But if you have a question for any of the speakers you've heard today, please do stick your hand up and we'll do our best to answer. Or you want to ask me a question, don't be shy. This is a life-changing opportunity. So first question, say who you are and who you want the question directed to. Sir.
Cathal Ellis, Greenmount College in Antrim. We're just about to initiate a project. We call it a knowledge and technology transfer project on electric vehicles. First of all, just want to mention to Quentin that I too have on my phone a picture of my energy meter from my Prius plug-in, and our figures are not too far apart. My question is to Dr. Hardwick, and it was something, again, Quentin mentioned about loss of performance during cold weather. Will there be any improvement on sort of cold weather energy output in the newer developing batteries, or is this something that we're just going to have to live with?
Okay. You hold it. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good.
And if you can be as brief as possible.
I'll be as brief as possible. So briefly, yes, but I'll just expand upon that. So the reason why you see power fade at cold temperatures is the current electrolyte, the conductivity of the lithium ions in the electrolyte decrease rapidly at cold temperatures. However, there are sort of well-known electrolytes which are incompatible with the current materials, which can still deliver good conductivity down to minus 40 degrees. So with sort of materials development, there is a potential where you can have batteries which still can deliver a reasonable, say, driving range at that lower temperature.
That's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Gentleman at the back there. Just tell us who you are, where you're from, and who your question is to.
My name is Robert Lucas. Been a driving instructor for a long time. Now drive school buses, but what I was interested, I missed the start of it, so I'm not sure who to address this question to. But if someone was to learn to drive an electric car, would the license cover them for any other vehicle, or would they be restricted only to that car?
As far as I know, it is completely open. Somebody took their test in a Leaf quite recently. Because it's automatic, you would be restricted to an automatic license, but if you take your test on an electric car and it has been done, you have a full normal driving license that would allow you to drive an internal combustion engine car as long as it's automatic.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Quinn.
Okay, well, we're all thinking about it. Oh, here we are.
Try and rattle through these questions. 13th of November, Andy, I put money down for a Zoe. A Zoe, where's my Zoe? Okay. If it were ever to break down, could I tow it? Are there any brakes? Where I live in the mountains of Moher, and there's a fair amount of flooding. What depth of water would you drive an electric car through from the point of view of the batteries and the connections? The regenerative braking, that will only work at slow speeds. That will not work at slow speeds, so you'll have to switch over to the other form of braking. It's a bit odd sometimes, the braking for people, I understand, to get used to this system.
This isn't a question, this is a white paper.
It's a pity the minister wasn't here, because this is the only part of Northern
But
Ireland.
these are good questions from someone who has ordered an electric car. So let's carry on.
The only part that never introduced the feed-in tariff. I'll leave that with you. The battery is leased at £70 a month. Should that not be taken into consideration? I mean, when I drive into a filling station, I don't pay £70 a month, so that should be part of the sum, I think. Okay. On the battery side, I'm nearly finished. There's not one battery. There's 100 batteries in series, like the old Christmas tree lights. 100 cells. It only takes one of those cells that have a bad connection. The battery's dead. Is that right? Finished.
Okay, I will try and wrap
I can see you're so happy.
every single one of those. The official launch will be beginning of June this year. We are just waiting for the first, I've got to be very careful because there are some of the dealers in the room and they don't know this yet. The first dealer demonstrators will arrive late May. So apologies, it is not untypical within our industry that we... There is no problem with it. We've actually done an awful lot of tests believe it or not, we've done a lot of infrastructure testing on the vehicle because of the, and I'm getting a bit technical, because of it's got AC fast charge rather than DC. So it's very important that we work out that we make sure that the vehicles, and the testing has actually proven that we've had to make some changes to effectively to the software mapping. So what we have been guilty of is we haven't kept you informed of that because we don't want to communicate a date and then have to change that. But we will be, again, with the dealers in the room, they will be getting something in the next 7 to 10 days to tell them all about it. Second question was towing. It can be towed. We send out to the recovery people a guide of how to tow an electric vehicle, and it does need to be specifically towed because you cannot, in effect, the drive wheels need to be off the road.
Like an automatic?
Like an automatic. In terms of regen braking, it is definitely an acquired, it is definitely something that you need to experience and need to get used to. The one thing I would say is, for me, it's having got used to driving the vehicle and avoided the temptation to put your foot on the brake. It's actually it is a very easy way of driving. So please don't be fearful of that. Wading, if we want to call it that, the motor is incredibly well protected. I'm not saying to you go in anything that you wouldn't go in your internal combustion engine, but I'd say at least a foot, basically up to the axle, you'll be absolutely fine. Feed-in tariffs I'll avoid. Batteries or the price of batteries, as I said, there are two ways of skinning the cat, if you like. You either charge £8,000 to £10,000 more for the car, or you repackage it and effectively spread the cost of that over the next 10 years. I still stand by the mantra that at £70 a month, it's only the same as filling the fuel tank up. If you do a lot less mile, if you're not putting 70 quid in, then I have to be really blunt about it. The economic case is not great, but you would be, if you were doing that low mileage in what I'd call a battery included car, you'd still have to pay for it somewhere along the line, and arguably you'd take a much bigger hit on the depreciation of that in the 3 years. In terms of the cells, maybe this is my glass is half full rather than half empty thing. The whole battery is, the great thing about a modular battery is that actually the battery doesn't work, but from a replacement point of view, that modularity would allow you to take out, because ours they're 48 modules of in effect 4 cells per module. So you could take the module out, you could even strip the module back, and certainly from Renault or from Nissan, there is in effect a battery repair plant, rather than looking at it from the point of view of writing the whole battery off. Apologies if that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour and directed very much at one. I've got a bit of a bad neck, actually.
Okay, any more questions? One at the back here.
Graham Stambridge from Belfast City Council. My question is directed towards the gentleman in the motor industry, and particularly Dr. Hardwick there. Over the last few years, the motor industry has put a lot of work into making vehicles from recyclable materials, particularly HGV vehicles. Can you really ensure me that the same high standards are in the electrical vehicles, particularly in the battery? Because our ultimate aim here is to reduce our carbon footprint, and if we are producing more problems, particularly in the disposal of the batteries, that there's actually a reduced carbon footprint in the disposal of the vehicle.
Could I answer? Actually, do you want to answer it, Ian?
It's up to you. You're on the roll.
Okay. Could I give you what I call the layman's view, and then I'll hand you.
But we need to be brief.
We will be very brief. Obviously, there is a carbon cost to manufacturing the vehicle. The great thing about the new generation of electric vehicles is they're produced in the same factories. So in effect, the production process is as efficient as it is with any other vehicle. The big carbon saving obviously comes in use. Looking at the battery specifically, we don't want to be, the price I gave you for the battery, we actually have a vested interest in finding a second life for those batteries anyway. And that's where a lot of the effort has gone. There's been a TSB study in terms of looking at using second life batteries. Second life is the ideal. As a minimum, we've got to look at the recycling of those batteries because there's a lot of money tied up in them. There's several kilos of lithium involved. So, if you can extract that, it's a good thing. So please don't think of quarter-ton batteries going straight from car to landfill. The stakes are too big.
Rare earth metals, yep. Correct.
The battery pack in an electric vehicle ranges from, say, £5,000 to £10,000. So it has a certain value, and the materials within the battery have a higher concentration than the ores extracted from mines. So in a sense, it's easier to extract the raw materials out of a spent battery than it is to go away, usually in China or South America, to a mine and get the products. So I think once there is a certain critical mass of electric vehicles and spent batteries, there is going to be a huge incentive to recycle them and reprocess these very materials which are not in very high concentration in the UK. So it's certainly in the UK interest to hold on to old batteries and to keep them ready to be recycled, because it's certainly going to be much cheaper in the future because we're actually importing a very, say, rare resource from elsewhere. So it's in the UK's interest to hold on to that resource and regenerate it for another battery.
A bit like catalytic converters on cars, which are valuable, recyclable, and often stolen. So I don't think anybody's going to throw their battery pack away. Final question now before lunch. Anybody?
Hi, my name's Chris McBrien. Could I ask you, will there be a facility regarding the infrastructure where one account will do all customers? Currently, electric vehicle customers have to register with a number of different organisations and providers, so they could arrive at a charge point, not have an account, and not be able to use that charge point.
Good question, Irene.
Can you hear me okay? Is it on?
A bit closer.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. When you go onto the eCar website, you can register. It's ecarni.com. You can register and you get an access card. Any number of drivers can go online and get an access card. You can get an access card per vehicle or two per vehicle, and that will allow you to open all of the infrastructure in all of Northern Ireland and all of the Republic of Ireland as well.
Yeah, I can see that for Northern Ireland, but in the UK you've got Pod, you've got Ecotricity, Polar, etc. and you need to register for a separate card for each of those
yes,
providers?
okay. Yeah, okay. So you're asking about interoperability. At the minute, no, not yet, but we are working towards it. All the different plugged in places projects are working together to ensure that we have interoperability. We're working towards using mobile phones to pay as you go costs on opening the charge points and paying for them as you go. So it's not in place at the minute, but it's certainly going to be in place in the near future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, I'd say from a manufacturer's perspective, on mainland UK, it's very, very frustrating, because the disaster is somebody in an EV turning up at a charge point and not being able to charge, either because they're not a member of that scheme, or their car doesn't work on that particular charge point. So the quicker we can get interoperability and basically pay as you go, the better.
And
Yeah,
this
I'm just curious, as part of, sorry.
proves the virtue of doing it now after the UK's done it, just to stop having those sort of problems.
I thought as part of the Plugged In Places project, which was government match funded, there should have been continuity, which would have made it simpler at this stage.
I think it was more, the start of these projects, they were all pilot projects at the start to help us determine what type of infrastructure to put in. And now that the pilot infrastructure is in place, we're now working together for the more commercial mass rollout of EV charging infrastructure. So we're taking all the lessons that we've learned from all the different pilot projects and we're applying those principles. So obviously interoperability is one of the key lessons that we've learned, and we will work on that, and we are working on that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, look, thank you all very much for your questions. Thank our panel for being so brave, particularly Andy, who gets the prize for answering the most number of questions in the shortest period of time. So please give them all a big round of applause. And remember the challenge I set you this morning. Please, obviously eat and obviously have a look at the exhibition, but please, if you haven't driven an electric car, and I know a lot of you haven't, go out there and do it now, because this is a heaven-sent experience. Back in an hour and a half?
An hour and 15.
An hour and 15, please. 1 hour, 15 minutes. Thank you all very much indeed.